You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you SPKEX volatility products. SPKEX options and futures are traded on the SPKEX Volatility Index, SPKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about SPKEX at miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again to end your week with a little volatility talk. Yes, it is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever scintillating, ever compelling Options Insider Radio Network. Of course, if you like what you hear, you're one of our many on-demand listeners, and all we ask you to keep rating and reviewing really does help the legion of new folks, and they're certainly legion these days, continuing to discover this show and the entire network and driving the network to new records pretty much every month this year. So if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. Really does help new folks discover the content. And as we've all seen over the last couple of years, there are a ton of new folks discovering the world of options and, as a result, the world of volatility. So again, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. Really does help. And of course, if you want more in your lives, including quite the palooza of pro content coming at you a little bit later today, you're getting a double dose today, listeners. Right after this show, you're going to get Options Oddities, and later on today, you're going to get Pro Q&A. Double dose of pro goodness. Of course, if you go to the pro, you also get live access to this show, everything else we do throughout the week. And it's almost that time, listeners. It's almost time to announce the winner of the Options Insider Pro Trading Crate for September. So if you want to get your name in the hat, you got to get in there pretty much before the end of the day. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Or for you really cool kids, you want something extra, /secret club. That's the place to go. Get your name in the hat. Get entered into the giveaway. Get all the good content. It's a fun time. Let's see who's joining us for the fun time on the show today. First, let's go out once again to the Southern Volatility Mecca known as Austin, where we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, how go things in the Southern Volatility Mecca?
Things are great, Mark. It is a kind of an interesting day today. I'm kind of up in the air on what's going on, but I'm excited to talk about it and trade it with you and our listeners.
Yes, I think the market is kind of up in the air about what's going on today as well. We'll get to all of that in a second. First, let me also welcome on our MIAX hot seat guest for this week, a good friend, Mr. John Smollen, the Executive Vice President and Head of Exchange Traded Products and strategic relations. Say that 5 times fast, listeners. Mr. John, welcome back to the show, sir. It has been too long.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, it has been too long, but I've got some really good partners in the vol business, so I'm sure you're in good hands every week. But today, I'm the man.
Today,
I'm ready to go.
You're taking the reins here. Should be fun as we dive right on into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we break down the week that was and indeed still is. From a vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity, all sorts of fun perspectives. And as the meatball alluded to, kind of a bit of a weird one out there today. We did a lot of living earlier in the session, had a pretty impressive 50 handle range out there in the S&P and then right back down again. So he started selling off this morning, got down to around 36.18 or so. And then we kind of turned around after that, started rallying. And that's where that kind of 50-point range comes in. Got all the way up to about 36.69 and then right back down again to where we're hanging out. We were unched not that long. This weird day. You look for 1 second, you're unched, you're up a tenth of a point. Next second, you're down a tenth of a point. It's one of those kind of days, listeners. As we're speaking right now, the S&P is pretty much unched. The Dow off about 1/3%. The NASDAQ up about 1/3%. So again, one of those days. Also a weird week where coming into the start of the show, we had vol in many of our products almost literally unched from where it was this time last week. That is very strange. That almost never happens. In fact, spikes when we kicked off the show, 30.25, pretty much exactly unched from where it was this time last week, listeners. VIX cash was unched until right before showtime. Then it gave up a little bit of the ghost. So it was at about 30.5, which would have put it at about exactly unched on the week. When we kicked off the show, it had ticked down to about 30.10 or so. So that puts it down about 0.4 of a point. Still, not a heck of a lot of movement, not a heck of a lot of evolution, even though we saw a pretty interesting week during the course of all that fun. But yeah, net on the week, we're pretty much hanging out back where we were a week ago. VVIX 104. So that one's showing a little bit more signs of life. That one's back in triple digit range. Again, a range we have been, I should say, really were hanging out in for the better part of the entire pandemic era until earlier this year. Now back up in triple digits range, up about 5 points from where we were this time last week. So we were flirting with triple digits last week. Weren't quite there by showtime. But this week, we have made it to 104 for VVIX. Not to be outdone, our friend the Viking, a.k.a. VSPKES, is at a 138. That one just shooting up today, up 29 points from where it was this time last week. If you're still kind of working out your frame of reference for the Viking, the range we've had, since it's only been about a year that we've had this thing, not even really. But the range so far has been about almost 206. That was the high set back on December 3rd of last year. And then the low was this July 29th of about 89.5. So we're still in the lower end of that range, but we're ticking up there now. We're getting respectable again from a vol perspective out there. All right, a lot to unpack. Let's go around the horn the opposite of the way we start. Let's go out to the MIAX hot seat first. Mr. John, a lot going on in your neck of the woods, a lot going on in the market this week. What is lighting up your tape out there this week, sir?
Again, where we're we see what you see. I think volumes have been good in the obviously in the equity options. With spikes being based off SPY, we pay a lot of attention to what's going on, and you can kind of see some of that going back and forth. But the market's being driven by some really macro issues here, and I think as they kind of heat up and cool down, you see what goes on in the market. And next month's gonna be a really interesting month. As we head into more earnings. But on our side, we're building out our complex. The ETF options are out. They're starting slowly, but they're out there. Op markets are good. Our futures markets are good. Our spikes markets are really, really good, and we're seeing more and more. And we like where that product's going, but it all comes down to what's going on in the overall market. And so I think for vol trading, it's a pretty good market.
That it is. Let's go out to the Southern Volatility Mecca, Mr. Meatball. Like we said, a weird one today, but a lot of interesting vol developments going on over the course of the week. What was lighting up your tape this week, sir?
A lot softer, probably a little bit of weekend effect, but also very much is going to cause vol to come in. We don't usually talk about bond vol, but bond vol is sky high. If you want to look at the MOVE index, if you want to look at something like VXTLT, if you want to look at 10-year, just plain old vol on the 10-year treasury note, it is sky high. And that is maybe part of what's kind of juicing up VIX right now, because what we're seeing is a breakdown in the bond market where investment grade debt. I don't know if you, John, I don't know if you saw what happened with, triple B and A and some of the lower end of the investment grade debt. It has gotten smoked. And, we talk about the selling in the treasuries, but the selling in the treasuries pales in comparison to what's going on with names like LQD or individual bonds in the investment grade space. That has really been what spiced up volatility over the last few days.
Now that's a great observation and a great statement of fact, and again, stepping back to a previous life I had, that's one of those macro issues that people have always, they don't pay attention to the debt in the equity and the corporate world, and who knows, sometimes the winds come from the west, sometimes they come from the east, but occasionally the south, and in this case, it's an example of volatility coming out of an area that people never had to pay attention to. So it's a really good point.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the MOVE Index too often here on the show. Formerly the Merrill Lynch MOVE Index. I do believe ICE acquired it recently, as they like to acquire a lot of different things out there. But yes, it is an interesting measure of bond vol, looking at pretty lofty levels. In fact, just a couple of sessions ago was at its high for the year of almost 159, 158.99, at about a 148 right now. If you don't follow the MOVE Index, listeners, a year ago was 61. So bond vol obviously looking a little frothy out there these days, listeners. Let's see what else is looking frothy out there on the VIX and Spikes futures curve. Before we even get into VIX futures, I know we've had Matt on recently, John. We've had Todd on recently, and just a lot of interesting stuff. We had Tom on recently, of course, and a lot of interesting developments in the world of Spikes futures. Anything you want to catch us up on before we dive into all the things going on the vol surface, sir?
I think that, your listeners are sophisticated, and to have a really sound volatility product, you need to have multiple, classes of ways to trade it. And obviously that was something that the VIX guys did over time at SIBO. And it's what we're doing here at MIAX. We have a pipeline of products that are going to be coming out that the guys will be able to talk about over the next couple of months. But, the ETF, the 1X and the 1.5, options on them, options on our future, the futures market itself, the quality of the market. So it's all kind of rounding up. And, I think it's a company where we like where we are, and we think we're going to be able to really bring a good solid, we are bringing a good solid suite of products for people to trade. And we like the trend. And I think the people that trade vol should be excited about what they're going to have available to them as a risk layoff or an additional risk taker of what's out there in the market now.
Let's explore some of those products out there and the future side. Let's get out to the old vol surface. I've often said many times, the answers to all of your vol questions lurking somewhere in that volatility surface. You just have to find it, listeners. And this week, that surface, once again, is backwards. So if you're wondering, That's that first check mark we always look for. Yes, we are backward this week, so beware out there. Always stay frosty when the VIX curve is backward. Not quite as aggressively backward as we saw earlier this week, obviously, listeners, but still a little bit of juice out there. When we kicked off the show, we had the OCC future up about a little over half a point, about 0.6 of a point from where it was this time last week. The no futures up pretty much a full point. I'm sure if we re-rack those now, it'll be a little bit different. Such is the way with all things VIX futures, listeners. Mr. Meatball, interesting stuff. Obviously, whenever we get backward, it's time to be cautious. But what's been lighting up your tape out there in the world of VIX futures this week, sir?
Yeah, today we're actually seeing the VIX index basically sitting on top of that October future. The curve has flattened. But overall on the week, we stayed backward all week. We've now been in backwardation for what feels like a good period of time. But today we are seeing a little bit of flattening, and we're seeing the back end actually get a little bit more backward even as we flatten. The back end of the curve remains sky high. And I can't wait to get into VIX options and SPKEX options because there's been some just massive trades going up this week that I can't wait to talk about. But if you look at open interest in the back months, it is really high. Open interest in the front looks about normal. But it is, volumes remain pretty high. And, it's just a busy time for volatility right now. And again, the open interest in the back end, December through May is really high.
Let's check out what's going on out there in the land of vol options. We'll start in the land of SPKEX options. John, I'm going to read off a list of the top 10 positions in SPKEX options. And everyone who rotates through the MIAX hot seat now, they are legally obligated to try to explain this to our audience because it is, shall we say, interesting. An interesting clientele has found their way to SPKEX options these days, which we like to see. We always like to see, of course, robust ecosystem. Everyone loves the 10,000 lots and all that stuff. But, the retail folks, the 5 lots, the 10 lots, the 20 lots, those things are starting to make their way into SPKEX as well now these days, which shows that the folks out there are starting to pick up on it. But let me read off some of these. I think you'll probably see where I'm going. Number 10 out there right now in the SPKEX options are the October 180 puts. Yeah, it's 180, listeners. I said SPKEX was at about a 30 and about a quarter. Now it's about 30 and a third right now. So pretty deep right there. Number 9, we have the OC 170 puts. Number 8, the October 140 puts. Number 7, the October 70 puts. Number 6, we've got the October 32 half puts, a very comparatively reasonable put strike, all things considered. Number 5, we go the other way now, down to the OC 24 calls. Number 4, we have the October 21 calls. Now we're getting meaty. Number 3, the October 13 halves. Now we're going completely the other way. Number 2, the OC 11s. And the number 1 position in SPKEX options right now are the NOV 12 calls. So, John, I put it to you, sir. What is up with SPKEX options? Someone has really just gravitated towards deep in the money options to a degree I've never seen before, John.
Again, I don't know when I'm assuming the guys that are in the deep in the money calls, probably bought them a couple, not too far back and had a nice, kind of run here and they haven't sold. But again, option traders are different folks. I don't know if they're trading against other stuff, trading against VIX, but I have in all the years of trading, I couldn't come up with the reason why I would want to own the 170. The 170s or the 180s in SPKEX. So I don't know. It's Friday. It's late. I got nothing.
The OC 180 puts not lighting up your tape this week, John. Not your first choice.
No. Back in the day, when there was a 5-year period on the floors where people would look for those deep trades, and they do the carry trade, so to trade against them for the dividends. So I'm surprised we haven't seen that, trying to capture that. So
SPY does have a dividend. People always forget that. But yes, Crazy stuff afoot. Interesting. I'm curious. This has been a fun talking point now for a while now as we continue to see this paper. It continues to go up. It's not just a one-time aberration. So some folks really have an axe to grind on the deep in the money side of things over there. Are you trading these, listeners? Are you intrigued by this? You have your own theory as to what's up? Hit us up. Let us know. Speaking of letting us know, it's like our chat. We have some folks claiming victory already in our crystal ball, including Mr. Nichols. At least some folks are claiming it for him. I have Nichols at a 32, though, listeners. So I don't see the victory. It's not a bad guess for this week. It's certainly a little closer. Actually, yes, it's a little closer than I am. I'm on the lower side. I'm on 27 and change. But I don't think, unless we see a nice spike, pun intended, I don't think we're going to be hitting a 32 before the end of the show. But crazier things have happened. If you wanted to declare a victory early, I salute that. It's a pro move out there. Let's see what's going on in the world of VIX options. And we've got a decently active day, all things considered, 326,000. But that's not a good indicator of the action we saw this week. The ADV is a much better indicator that we saw some paper this week. Because remember, very recently on the show, I was saying, we're trending in the wrong direction. Even last week, we were at 401,000. We were below 400,000 not too long ago. It seemed kind of meager for VIX options, given everything that was going on out there. And it has finally rebounded this week and pretty aggressively. The ADV is now up to 528,000. That's up 127,000 contracts since last week, listeners. So VIX has been putting up some numbers this week. We'll get to that in a second. First, let's break down what are the size positions that are open in VIX options right now. What are the top 10 size positions in VIX options right now? By the way, only two of those are puts right now. So 8 calls to 2 puts in the top 10. Read into that what you will. Number 10, 179,000. That's how much it cost you to break into the top 10 in VIX right now. It's actually a little heftier than it usually is, so that's not bad. That gets you to the Nova 80s. Once again, listeners, you're going to see some optimistic quote-unquote strikes. Not quite as outlandish as it has been in the past, so maybe that's a sign as well. Number 9, 194,000 of the October 20 puts, the first of 2 puts in our top 10 this week. Number 8, 202,000 of the March 75s. Number 7, our second and final put in the top 10, 209,000 of the October 25 puts. Then it's all calls all the time, listeners. Number 6, 210,000 of the Oct 75s. Number 5, 210,000 as well of the October 50s. Number 4, 223,000 of the Oct 60s. So you got a nice little strip right there, listeners. Number 3, 231,000 of the Nov 70s. Once again, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Lighten up the tape here. Number 2, 256,000 of the 60s in November. And number 1 position in VIX right now, the Nov 50s, 303,000 of those. We were talking about these last week, listeners. The 1/5, the ratios have been kind of dominating all the headlines out there, but there are other ways to play the upside. And we were talking about that last week, in particular around these Nov 50s. So intriguing stuff out there. In terms of what's been lighting it up this week, let's do a quick rundown that I'm sure the Meatball has some thoughts on what trades were lighting up his tape this week. Today, like we said, a decently active day. Not exactly blowing the doors off. We're not threatening 1 million contracts or anything like that, but decent paper, especially compared to where we were this time a week ago. The ADV was only 401,000. So we are within spitting distance of that today. 326,000 contracts on the tape right now. The big dog today, about 57,000 of the Oct 23 puts, followed by 42,000 of the Oct 27 puts. Number 3, 25,000 of the Oct 25 puts. Number 4, 20,000 of the Oct 29 puts. You getting a theme here, listeners? Good, because we're about to break it. 19,000 for number 5 of the Oct 35 calls. The only call to be found in our top 5 today. Yesterday, a little bit more paper on the tape, 519,000 contracts. The big dog yesterday, the DEES 85s. We're getting back into it, listeners. 34,000 of those going up yesterday, followed by number 2, 29,000 of the Oct 30s. Number 3, 26,000 of the Oct 35s. Number 4, 20,000 of the DEES 80s. And number 5, 15,000 of the Nov 95s. Yes, those are some of those good strikes we've been waiting for, listeners. Wednesday, 676,000 contracts on the tape, so a pretty active day, but not the most active day. We'll get there. 86,000 of the Jan 25 puts. That was the big dog on Wednesday, followed by 47,000 for number 2 of the Oct 27 puts. Number 3, 30,000 of the DEES 28 puts. Number 4, 21,000 of the Jan 30 calls. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, 21,000 as well of the Jan 30 puts. So maybe a bit of could be a straddle, could be a conversion reverse. I'll have to go dig into what that paper was on Wednesday to see, but the numbers line up pretty much exactly. So if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, listeners. Tuesday was a pretty active day. Most weeks that would have been the top dog, but not this week. Tuesday, 709,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog on Tuesday, 49,500 of the OCC 40s, followed by 42,000 for number 2 of the OCC 60s. So an intriguing vertical there. Number 3, 42,000 of the Ds 24 puts. Number 4, 40,000 as well of the Ds 25 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a pretty active Tuesday, 35,000 of the OCC 25 puts. Then we get to Monday. That was the big dog of the week. The first time we've seen an M floating around out there in VIX in quite some time. 1.34 million contracts. Yes, we hit it there on Monday, listeners. And remember we said last week on the show, we said, Friday, people were spooked with the sell-off. If the sell-off continues into Monday, that's usually when the panic really kicks in and things really start to pop off. We saw some weird paper. We saw some weird price action in the indexes on Monday as well. But there was some selling going on, obviously, and that usually spooks folks to the tune of 1.34 million, including just monstrous trades out there. 213,000 of the NOV 50s. That was the big dog on a pretty active Monday. Number 2, the NOV 60s, 186,000 for those. Number 3, the OCC 50s, 139,000. Number 4, the OCC 60s, back to that vertical, also 139,000 of those. And rounding out the top 5 on an explosive Monday, we have 47,000 of the NOV 35 calls. Mr. Meatball, there's a ton to unpack here. Verticals, all sorts of fun, crazy call strikes, and a Monday that hit volume levels we have not seen in quite some time, sir. What was lighting up your tape on a pretty active week?
Yeah, it was Monday. I mean, it's hard to ignore. They bought the NOV 50-60 call spread 172,000 times. They also bought the OCC 50-60 call spread. They bought the 55-60 call spread, and earlier in the day, those happened later in the day. Earlier in the day, they bought the NOV 35-50, the NOV 35-55. They had traded an OCC. They bought October 40 calls, NOV 40 calls. It was they were jumping over themselves to get at volatility in VIX for October and November, primarily November, heading on Monday. And we kind of saw that trend continue all week, right? The volume relaxed, but traders are coming for November upside. They want it, and they want it bad.
What are your thoughts on that? A NOV 50-60, OCC 50-60. We don't see a ton of those. If you see spreads in VIX, usually they're maybe a little bit wider and not starting at that 50 level. What are your thoughts on that 50-60 vertical?
I mean, it makes sense. It's within the realms of possibility, unlike like the 90 calls that we see sometimes. My guess is this is certainly a hedge of some kind, potentially in the bond market, because as we know, there is a good correlation between rising yields, falling bond prices, and the VIX are negatively correlated, maybe better than even the S&P. And so you do see, November is also when the Fed meeting is. So that would make a lot of sense for the bond market to be involved. And we know that 50 Cent was a credit trader. So this may all be around credit.
I'm looking here. Looks like they did the NOV for around 39 cents. So intriguing, listeners. What are your thoughts on that? The NOV 50-60 for 39 cents. You like that? Does that excite you out there? It's an intriguing one out there. Obviously sizable, 172,000 times on Monday. So you put a few of those up, you're going to threaten the 1 million volume level pretty quickly out there. The OCC also saw the OCC 50-60 going up for looks like 32 cents, 135,000 times. So yeah, a couple of those, and you're on the way to 1 million pretty quickly out there. Let's get on out to some other new products that have been joining the fray of late. John, not sure you have a thing or two to add about these. We also are still workshopping some names. SPKY, obviously the 1.5 version. That's spiky. That's got that. The name kind of rolls off the tongue. That's pretty easy. We're still workshopping a name for SPKX. Obviously, Spikes is taken, so we need something else. Sparks and Spiky. I don't know if that goes well together. So maybe we need to change it to Sparks and Sparky. We're still workshopping it. Either way, SPKX, kind of the The plain vanilla 1-to-1 coming into showtime is at about 30.90, up about 0.2 of a point. And good old spiky, aka the 1.5 component, the 1.5 flavor, getting a little bit more juice. That was up about 0.2 of a point as well at about a 33.80. Actually, it's at a 33.90 now, so it's up a whopping 0.3 of a point. John, what's been lighting up your tape out there in the land of good old SPKX and spiky this week?
Again, we're early in the game. I think we're getting good calls on it. People, asking us a bunch about it. The thing I think I'm most excited about is our market makers are excited to trade it, and that is a big thing. When you have market makers that specifically, we have a couple firms that are really, really, really good at what they do. Household names for people in the industry, Susquehanna, Citadel, Group One, great firms, great partners of ours, but they're excited to trade it. And, liquidity is, you have to have someone to trade with. And we're excited about the fact that these guys want to trade this. So that's our big takeaway for the first couple of weeks. We're talking to a bunch of retail firms. We're out doing what we do. It's a marathon, and we're in the first 100 yards.
Mr. Meatball, I know you're sitting on a size 1 lot right now in good old SPKX. Allow me to pose a trade for your consideration. We saw someone coming in this morning in good old SPKX. Again, listeners, it's a little bit shy of 31 right now, about a 30.90, and gobbling up the OC 47s for 30 cents. What do you think about those, sir?
If you're looking for a big move higher in a very short period of time, makes some sense with the spikes curve backward. You don't have the decay that exists within these products. So, it's possible. I have not fared well on my 1 lot of the October 27 puts. I'm about 50% there, but I still have faith. I've got time. My 1 lot will prevail.
Your 1 lot will come home to you, sir. Give it time. Give it time. And you're right. The backward, it does ease at least some of the concerns you would have if you're loading up on these swing for the fences SPKX called, which is, of course, the erosion. Not quite getting that right now with a juicy backward spikes futures curve. So intriguing stuff. You like those, listeners? OC 47s for 30 cents. Somebody did this morning. So intriguing stuff. Let's get on out to good old SVIX. This one, I've said it before. I've discussed it with a lot of our guests. This one was getting all the headlines. This was getting all the hand-wringing coming into the relaunch of it not too far back now. Everyone was like, oh, my God, how dare they bring back an inverse VIX product? It will be the end of all things. The sky is falling. And so far, it's done a whole heck of a lot of nothing, really. It's at a 1070 right now, down a whopping 1/10 of a point. In terms of paper, got an ADV of about 859, so not a ton. It's starting to trend a little bit north. That said, we are seeing a little bit of paper going up today. So maybe the SVIX gods are finally smiling upon it today. We're seeing 1,314 contracts going up out there today. Let's see if anything interesting is printing. Oh, it's pretty much all one trade. It's 1,005 of the March 25s. Again, I said SVIX is at a 1070, listeners. We saw huge prints, well, huge for this, 550 and 200 going up for 20 cents. This market was atrocious, no bid at 40. So they literally split the uprights on these bad boys. It seems like later on there was someone parked a 20-cent bid. So I'm guessing, let's see, when do these go? Yeah, it looks like someone probably bought these. But intriguing stuff out here. So yeah, garbage markets and an interesting print going up out here in SVIX. Listen, let's move on to UVIX. UVIX usually does a little bit more paper out there, and that remains the case again this week. The ADV a little bit higher, 66.65 coming into showtime. That's up about 300. So not a huge move on the week, but it's something. It's something to talk about out there. And in terms of paper today, about 3,000 contracts on the tapes. That's interesting. Let's get on out to our top 5 positions out here, which we can actually do in UVIX because there actually is a little bit of paper. Number 5, we got 1,055 of the OC 12s. Remember I said we're at a 12.95 right now, listeners. UVIX, obviously the 1.5 levered product. Number 4, 1,165 of the DEES 30s. Interesting. Number 3, 1,300 of the AUK 11 puts. Number 2, 1,600 of the AUK 12s. And the number 1 position in UVIX right now, 2,012 of the DEES 18 puts. If it was 2112, that would be cool, but 2012 nonetheless out there. So intriguing stuff out there. In terms of today's action in UVIX, what is going up out there today? Not a heck of a lot, actually. It's 3,000 total, but not many size prints. The biggest print out there today are the AUK expiring next week. So on the 7th, the 15 calls, doing a whopping 255 contracts. So it's a decent amount of paper today. It's just all scattered in small trades. Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts? Is SVIX? I mean, it's all 1,000 lot today, so that's pretty much it. That's all the paper. But you think SVIX could possibly be showing a sign of life? And then B, what's lighting up your tape in your preferred product of the two, UVIX, this week, sir?
Yeah, UVIX has been busy. Kind of the same story as a lot of as spiky and what did we decide on the other one?
We're still workshopping it. It's still open for listener submissions.
Okay. Has that positive decay. It's got a little volume today. I expect that to pick up as we get toward expiration. It's moving. It's had a nice run higher. It's pulling back a little bit today with volatility, but this is doing what it's supposed to do. I continue to see markets tightening in that one, and I'll say it one more time. This thing is going to usurp UVXY as the preferred long, levered VIX product over the course of the next months and years.
Well, speak of the devil, speak of UVXY, and he shall appear. Right now, UVXY, when we kicked off the show, was at 12.15, up a whopping 0.15. As we're moved on along a little bit now, it's at about a 12.30, so up about 0.3 of a point. Seeing a little bit of paper trickling in out there today, 211,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV is 308. That's up 29,000. So it's still moving back in the right direction in spite of the impending threat of UVIX. Let's do a quick top 5 out here in UVXY, then we'll get to what's going on out there today. Number 5, 14,600 of the SEP 13 calls. Number 4, 16,600 of the Jan 75s. There we go, right back at it, listeners. Number 3, 19,800 of the SEP expiring today, 10.5 puts. Those don't seem like they're going to work out. If you know anything about UVXY, usually folks are buying those, but we shall see. Number 2, 20,000 of the AUK expiring next week on the 7th, 10.5 puts. They got obviously a little bit more time for those. And the number 1 position out there in UVXY options, 21,000 of the October expiring next week, 13 calls as well. We are hanging out. Not quite there, but about 0.7 of a point away from the 13 handle. So intriguing stuff. In terms of what's lighting it up out there today, it is pretty much as you would expect. Mostly paper that's going out today. The SEP expiring today, 13 calls, which again is a little bit above what we're trading, listeners. Doing about 30,000 contracts today. That's not exactly surprising. Followed by number 2, 15,000 of the SEP 12 puts also going out today. And the SEP 12 half calls, again, going out today. 13,200 of those. So a little bit beyond that, we go out to next week again to those October 13. They like that strike, this time coming on the puts. 10,600 of the AUK expiring next week. 13 puts also going up. Let's do a top 5. Why not for today? 9,400 as well of the SEP expiring today. 12 calls. Those seem to be more at play right now than perhaps the 13s. Mr. Meatball, an intriguing week for UVXY. Once again, the folks who've been asking about a reverse split, not going to get it this week. Anything lighting up your tape out there in UVXY, sir?
Yeah, you're not going to get that reverse split until it's below 10 and really below 8. And it's going to have to be below that for a while. I think they've typically done it when it was in the 6 range, if I'm not telling tales outside of school. And yeah, it's been busy. It's been active. And the options are, it's expiration. So there, that very front contract is moving around. And now have we talked VXX because there's creation units again? And it started to trade.
I was just pulling it up. I was just about to say, we finally expunged it from our show outline, from our show notes. We never have to talk about it again. And now they're dragging us back. You're saying we have to add it back in. That's what you're saying, sir?
Yeah, it's got volume. It's done just in the options expiring today over 10,000 contracts. So it's trading again. Sorry, Mark.
All right, I guess we can do a quick catch-up on all things VXX. Trading at 20.5 right now. Listeners, off about 1/10 of a point. In terms of action, let's see. What is the ADV out there in VXX? It's been a while since we checked in, listeners. It's up to 47,000, so that's up slightly. Obviously, I don't have the numbers where it was last week because we had finally washed our hands of VXX. Just when I thought I was out, listener, they pulled me back in. 30,000 contracts going up today. Let's do a quick top 5 out here in terms of size positions in VXX this week. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Number 5, 12,400 of the OC14 puts, followed by number 4, 13,000 exactly of the OC16 puts. Number 3, 14,500 of the OC40 puts. Interesting. Number 2, 14,600 of the OC40 calls. So some folks really like that 40 strike. And the number 1 size position out here in VXX, this is legacy stuff. This is pre-split adjusted VXX1, 15,000 of the Jan 2023 3 puts. So that shows you how light things got out there, listeners. Some of the legacy positions managed to percolate all the way up to the top of the list. In terms of what's trading out there today, let's see what is going up out here in VXX again. I feel like I'm checking in with a stranger again. 2,900 is the big dog today. That's the OC18 puts, followed by number 2, 2,400 of the SEP expiring today. 20 puts. Number 3, 1,500 of the DS25 calls. And number 4, 1,500 as well, the DS35s. Looks like a bit of a vertical DS25, 35. Are we starting to play in the upside again in VXX? Is this thing back? Look at the OI we just broke down, listener. There are actually calls. The 40 calls are open again out there. I mean, for how long? We even stopped breaking down the top positions in VXX because all anybody wanted was size puts. Because they thought once this thing started getting back to normal, if it ever did, it was just going to crater. And that is not what we're seeing. And we're also not seeing that in the OI today. Number 5 today, most active trades, SEP 21 calls, 1,100 of those as well. So Mr. Meatball, looks like our old friend VXX is kind of percolating back to life. And folks are actually trading the upside again, sir. What do you think of this DS25, 35 going up out there today, 1,500 times?
Yeah, it's picking up again now that they've got creation units. Traders are going to be in and out of that thing all over again. It's going to go back to normal trading at NAV. While in its absence, it's not like VIXY really took off. It'd be one thing if it had stolen a bunch of volume. VIXY's a VXX clone, and it didn't. So VXX is still the king of the single long VIX exposure ETPs.
All right, so everyone out there, listeners, who was celebrating the demise of VXX, alas, your celebration was premature. It's like that DS2535 and VXX went up for $1.04. Paper bought it 1,500 times. You like that, listeners? Are you into VXX upside again? Is this a thing you're looking at again? I'm curious. Hit us up. Let us know. We had just finally washed our hands of it, and now our hands are getting dirty again with all this VXX nonsense. Let's cleanse our palate, listeners. Let's go out to a little bit of earnings vol because that is back again, listeners. We're paying attention to that again. Had some interesting names popping off this week. Cracker Barrel and BlackBerry on Tuesday. Thursday, a name you may have heard of, Bed Bath & Beyond. That's got a little bit of meminess to it. Rite Aid, CarMax. We all know what happened to them. They got taken out to the woodshed. Micron and Nike yesterday. Today we have Carnival out there today. We did kind of some of the numbers yesterday on the option block for the earnings move results. Don't have an updated earnings season report yet. We're still waiting for, the season proper to kick off before we have, an official tally that begins for the new cycle. Of course, our last cycle was pretty robust, to put it mildly. 114% was the average. The hottest week was week 4, 129%. What does that mean? That means if you averaged out all the straddles that were going up in that week, listeners, and they came out, they moved exactly what was being priced in, that would be 100%. So 129% is a pretty substantial outperformance. The season as a whole, 114%. That's also pretty substantial, especially when you consider that the average right now for a season is somewhere around 86%. So the pandemic era has not been kind to earnings vol, and perhaps we are starting to see the tail end of that now, which is intriguing. Of course, you folks can check all that out, including some interesting calendars. They were going up in the earnings trades report here. Long calendars, pretty substantially long term. June October calendars. That's pretty long. Check out what was going up there, all for free, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab. You can check out the earnings trades report, the earnings move report, the earnings season report, and even the earnings move results reports. All at your leisure, listeners, as we keep on rolling. Time for a little bit of the old volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Voicemail, the portion of the show where you folks can take the reins, your questions, your comments, your insights, your pearls of wisdom. We also shine that spotlight back on you with our question of the week. This week's question of the week, it's actually revisiting a question we asked you earlier this year. The last time, back in June, the last time the markets really took a beating. We took a poll of you folks back then and asked you, what levels were you comfortable buying back in, starting to nibble again, the old BTFD? And back in June, over 40% of you said the level you were comfortable with was about 37.50. If it got below that, you were going to start nibbling again. And of course, we are below that now. When we posted it on Monday, this question of the week, the S was hanging out at about a 36.60. We are below that now, 36.20, 36.21. Right now. So the question we have for you folks this week is this the moment? Are you buying back in here, or are you waiting for lower levels? We gave you three choices. I'm back in, baby. Or you're waiting for those aforementioned lower levels, or kind of the sad one of the three, I never got out. John, we will go to you first as our guest. If you have a vote in terms of what you're feeling for these levels, have at it. And then B, more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for, sir? Are they back in? Are they waiting for lower levels, or did they never get out?
I think, I don't think the Fed's done. And you start getting to this point here where, 5, 6, 7%, there's some interesting plays out there on how you can make some reasonable cash. You've got the elections coming up, the midterm elections. I think some of that stuff you guys are talking about in the 50-60 stuff that's out there, I think some of that has to do with, what happens if the world goes all Democrat in the U.S. People are assuming there's going to be somewhat of a flip. Maybe there's not. I don't know. I think the last time we talked, I still think we need to test the lows of March of 20. We're not even close yet. So I think caution. The markets have, always pay attention to the charts, whether you believe them or not. There's a lot of people that do. And the charts indicate that we still have to go lower. So I'm in that camp. I'm in cautiously bearish.
You think our audience is there too?
I'm the old guy in the room. So I think we've had a lot of your listeners who really had great success and are smart, have seen nothing but up markets. And I think they have a tendency to root for what they're good at. I think more people are probably going to look for a bounce. That's where I think there's not a lot of guys kind of in our era that are still doing this. We're either too dumb or too smart. And so I think that most people are looking for a bounce.
Interesting. You think we have to retest the 2020 lows. So we got a ways to go down there, according to John, listeners. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. Well, first off, if you have a vote, have at it. And then are you like John? Are we retesting those March 2020 lows? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for?
I don't know that we test the March 2020 lows, but I've been looking for the pre-pandemic high for some time. That's right around 33.50. So where we were on February 18th of 2020, I have as kind of a target. My next level where I would probably go all in with both hands is around 29.50. That is another level that I've been kind of paying attention to. we're actually right up against my near-term resistance right here. So I've got some resistance right at 3,600, just below there, 35.95. But I think the audience is, I think they're unwilling to buy. That's the way the retail trader, right? They don't want to buy until they say they're going to buy, and then when it gets cheap enough to buy, they don't buy. And that's why it's nice to have cash on the sidelines, and why I'm trading the way I'm trading right now.
So you're saying they're waiting for lower levels. By the way, listeners, if you're wondering what are those March 2020 lows, we got to get down to about 2,300 in the S&P. So we got a little ways to go if we are going to test those levels. Let's see what our audience is up to this week. What are you guys feeling? Are you buying back in or are you not? Right now, Mr. Meatball is correct. 65.5% of you saying you are waiting for lower levels. About almost 21%, about 20.7% saying you're back in. So you're feeling it here. You're liking these levels. And 13.8% of you give me a sad face. You say you never got out. I feel for you. I feel your pain. Hopefully listening to our shows has helped at least teach you some ways to mitigate that, so you don't have to just ride the elevator up and ride it back down. There are things you could do in between, listeners, to just cushion yourself a little bit. So hopefully you got some of those in your back pocket. Some folks writing in, including Cat M, saying at this point he's doing neither. He's selling vertical spreads above the market in SPX. Well, there you go, Cat. Hopefully you're getting good levels for those out there. As we keep on rolling, it is time, listeners, to get difficult. It is time to get dangerous. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, listeners, welcome to the crystal ball, the most difficult, the most dangerous portion of the show, where we attempt to wrestle with the vol gods and see what they hold in store for us for the coming week. As we've been talking here, the markets have turned a little bit more red. The S&P is off about 0.5%, Dow off about 0.75%, NASDAQ off about 0.25%. So we are no longer mixed to slightly green on the day. Most of the major indices turning to the red. It means our vol friends getting a little bit frothier here to end the show. Spikes at about 30.75. When we kicked off the show, was at 30.25, so up about 0.5 point. We're seeing similar movements out there for VIX. VIX was a little bit north of 30, about 30.10, and it's about 30.64 right now. So about 0.5 point there in VIX land as well. So we're looking a little bit better for you, Nichols. You were at a 32, so you're closing in on being within a point of, I'm not sure if your early victory declaration notwithstanding, you're closer than a lot of us, so you could feel for that. I was at a 27.25 this week, so not winning this week for me. Mr. Luke coming in near me at 27.5. That was Luke Ribari, our guest from Equity Armor last week. And then the Meatball going full palindromic nonsense mode, 38.83. So he eclipsed us all to the far upside, and alas, no joy there. In terms of listeners, looks like Nichols was the closest of the listeners. I see a lot of 20 handles here. So no joy for most of those. Other options, Queen was at a 29, so she was probably the second closest behind you there, Nichols, but still no joy. Remember, 1/10 of a point, listeners. We're very demanding here in the crystal. That's why it's the most difficult and the most dangerous segment on the network. All right, it means no one wins this week. So especially you, Mr. Meatball, no victory for you. So that means, John, you get the dubious honor of going first. What are you feeling for this time next week in Spikes, sir?
I think I like, I'm kind of going lower. I'm kind of going into the 28.5 level.
28.5. Interesting. Don't hate it. Not sure if I love it, but I don't hate it. So that's something right there. Mr. Meatball will go last because that guest from last week deserves a sit in the corner moment for him. And I'm kind of torn myself, John. Again, this is the moments when things are frothy, when the VIX curve is backward, that literally anything can happen out there. So will the VIX curve retreat a little bit? Will we see some of that juice come out of it? Will we not be backward again? But this time next week, will that have that sucking effect on VIX itself? I'm going to lean towards probably yes. I don't, like I said, I don't hate where you are, John, but as respect for our guest, I will give you a little bit more wiggle room. I'm going to say for myself, I'm going to say 29-25. So not quite 2 point, about 1.5 points below where we are right now. So lower, but not substantially so. All right, Mr. Meatball, you got 28.5 on the dark side for John, 29.25 for me. What palindromic nonsense do you have for us this week?
Well, I've got a super palindrome for you today, Mark. You ready?
I am waiting with eager anticipation, sir.
33.
30. You know what? We had a listener guess that. Yes, a listener already guessed that. So you are carping our listeners in the live chat. We just saw 33 coming in a minute ago. Yes. So you are officially carping them. But you know what? Tell you what, that will be your guess. And then if you get it, then we'll give our listener, obviously, a fantastic prize as well. Listeners, that's your marker for this week. 28.5 on the downside, 29.25 on the Goldilocks level, which is me, just right. And then 33 to the upside. Again, some of our listeners also feel, look at 30-80. We got a 32 in there. Again, 33. So our listeners are feeling more vol. What are you feeling, listeners? If you're listening on demand, you still have time. Submit your guess, your suggestion for where vol will be next week. Got to do it by the end of the day. We can't let it go much farther than that. It's not fair to everybody else. But if you want to play along, if you get within a tenth of a point, you too can win fabulous prizes. All right, everybody. That music means we've come to the end of the show this week. A whole lot of vol living packed into an hour, listeners, including the much dreaded return of VXX. We thought we were out, but they pull us back in. Before we go, listeners, let's go around the horn. Let's start with you, John. If folks are intrigued about all things MIAX or Spikes or Spiky or anything else, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Yeah, you can go right to the MIAX website and www.miax.com, and we've got tons of material there. You can reach out to the MIAX at dlsales.com, and that's there. You just just hit the button, and one of the sales teams from our head strategist Shelley, all the way through the team down to me. So we're there. We'll take your questions and we'll answer you directly.
There you go. Hit them up over there at Spikes. While you're there, check out miaxoptions.com/Spikes. A lot of great data there, historical. You can get the quick strike for equities now, which is awesome. You can get, of course, Shift Search, which is a great free tool, and a whole bunch more. miaxoptions.com/Spikes. And Mr. Meatball, if folks are intrigued by all things vol, perhaps they want to debate your palindromic VIX guess for this week, where should they go? What should they do?
They should go to optionpit.com, my VIX Edge blog, every single day because it is the best.
There you go. You heard it there first. Completely unbiased opinion. VIX Edge blog is the best. Check it out, optionpit.com. That's going to do it for us. For all you on-demand folks, that will conclude your broadcast week. Thank you for joining us. For all you pro folks, hang out. We got a palooza coming for you today. A double dose of options oddities, followed instantaneously by a great pro Q&A session with the Rock Lobster himself. So a lot for you folks to look forward to. Of course, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go if you want to join that partay. And then, of course, have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week, another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at miaxoptions.com/Spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.